Quick cash for thieves stealing copper and other valuable metals from all kinds of places. Hello, I'm Richard Pyatt, and this is Legally Speaking. The Utah Attorney General's office is currently prosecuting a case in Salt Lake County where sheriff's detectives arrested 4 men, all connected to either stealing copper from Kennecott or buying the stolen property so they could resell it for profit. This is a heavy case, too, in more than one way. The copper items weighed more than 10,000 pounds and together are worth more than $147,000. The big money is our focus today and on other crimes like this. So who better to ask than our investigators who oversee this kind of thing in our case unit? That's Crimes Against Statewide Economy. Our commander here is James Russell, and Agent Megan Johnson from the State Bureau of Investigation is here to talk about these kinds of crimes. Thank you very much for joining us today, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So the case I described was from the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, but the AG's office assisted, and we are prosecuting it. How common are thefts of valuable metal like this from what you've seen? Megan, you've investigated these kinds of things. What do you say?
Well, the copper thefts have risen. We've had a lot of copper thefts, and the copper value is pretty high right now for
You're
resale.
talking statewide?
Statewide, yeah. Utah statewide, it's pretty heavy. The price is pretty good for people stealing. So what do you have, James?
So James, you also, case has all kinds of different sorts of cases, and this is one of them that you're seeing rise as well with everything else.
Yeah, like Megan said, with the rise of the value of copper, then we're going to see the rise of the theft of copper. The Salt Lake County Sheriff's case is pretty unique in the quantity of the product being stolen and where it was stolen from, but we certainly are seeing an increase in these kind of cases.
So I've heard about copper being stolen from areas like construction sites. There's people that will rip off EV car chargers and strip the copper out of those as well. We've done a lot on our podcast about people ripping off catalytic converters and then getting the precious metals out of those. Are there other places that you're seeing these kinds of thefts happening as well?
Yeah, so I mean, railroads will have wire cut along them. We're seeing power stations can even be victims of this, destroying real infrastructure on our power.
Megan, is it possible for you to just describe the different kinds of crimes that are going on?
Well, not only railroads and stuff that are being broken into, like James said, there's junction boxes on streetlights, intersections, so the streetlights go down. They steal the copper out of there, and they also steal aluminum. So any wires that they can get in there, they steal them, and then that causes stuff to break down, prices to go up for everybody else. And it's just it's a major problem that we're having right now.
Who are the people that are committing these crimes typically? Is it, a lot of the crimes are kind of tied to someone that has a drug addiction that's desperate for the money, but is it a bigger operation than that? Is it more organized? Or are there people that are just wanting the money because they want the money?
Well, certainly the Salt Lake County case is an outlier that with a high dollar value, but I think that one probably is still related to drugs. Drugs is really the driving force behind the theft. And most of these are occurring by locals who really are trying to get a quick buck for their quick fix.
Okay. Megan, would you describe this as a sophisticated kind of crime? It seems like it involves planning, but also you have to figure out how you're going to get access. How did they get into Kennecott, for example, is a question that I have. I know you may not be able to answer that because the case is pending, but that's a question that I have at least. And the haul, as we saw in the Kennecott case, is really heavy and awkward. So they would have had some kind of means to transport it out of there. Would you say that these kinds of crimes are classified as sophisticated?
I would say that's a yes and a no. In some cases, they're just going in and finding a junction box, cutting it, bringing some cable cutters with them, cutting the wire, and then taking it, throw it in their car and taking off. Some of the cases, they have to bring a truck, trailer, way to haul the material, whether it's some type of cart, crane, any sort of trailers that they bring in. They have to have more than one person. They usually work with crews and groups and bring them into a system. So some of the cases can be sophisticated, but then some of it's just individuals taking what they need at one little time.
Yeah, and some of them will actually go after live wires, so they have to have an understanding of electricity, or they're going to end up getting hurt or worse. So in terms of knowledge, they oftentimes will go with what they know.
Well, I suppose if you look at this as like someone's job, if you go out to do a paint job, you get what you need. You get your paintbrush, you get your paint bucket, you get your ladder, and then you go out. I guess if they figured that this is their job, they just get everything that they think they're going to need and then just go for it. Does it kind of come down to that?
Yeah, pretty much. They, for some people that are in it for the drugs, they get what they need at that time, get the money that they need, they get their fix for that day, and then the next day they're out doing it again.
Is there like a larger group that organizes this though? Is there like some of these crimes that we see are run by a larger kind of group, like I don't want to say a gang that kind of has its own implications, but a larger group that has an interest in maybe a cut of the profits and make it easier for them to get a cut of it too. Does that occur?
I'm sure that happens, but here I think mostly what we're seeing are smaller groups, not really related to like a cartel or anything like that, but really more localized people who kind of get together in twos and threes, and really are there again for just supplying their drug habit. I don't think there's a bigger, broader thing going on here, but you never know.
Right. So it probably runs the gamut, just like everything else. So I know that we outlined some of the crimes that they're charged with. Typically, what kinds of laws are they breaking? Are these serious crimes? Are they felonies? What kinds of laws are they breaking? I mean, there's trespass, there's breaking and entering, there's theft. There's a whole gamut of different kinds of crimes that you could charge. How do you decide when you're working on a case how to charge them, and what kinds of laws are you looking at when you're investigating it?
So most of the laws are based on the value of the loss, and sometimes that's going to be much more on the side of the loss to replace something than it is on what they're gaining out of the deal. So if a construction company is building a house, for instance, and they come and rip all the wire out, it's a whole lot more expensive to come back and fix all of that than it is than the thieves are gaining out of that. So that value of the repair is what we're going to go after, and we're going to do burglary. We're going to do the theft itself, and there's any number depending on the number of times they've done it. We can go after something similar to racketeering called pattern of unlawful activity. All of these things are things we can use to try and get the biggest bang for our buck when it comes to charging. Okay,
so then the next question is, they have this metal, and what do they do with it? What about the resale of this stuff? In this case, the buyer was charged with receiving stolen property. I take it was like a salvage kind of an operation or something, but do we always bring the buyer into these kinds of cases, or what other venues are there for them to take this material and then resell it?
So from what I've seen, a lot of the times they just go resell to metal shops, salvage yards, like you said. And they're getting, $1 less than what brand new purchases. Like right now in October, like a bright and shiny copper is just over $30 a pound. When construction companies have to buy it over $4 a pound. So they're not getting as much, but they're just selling it at salvage yards, wherever they can offload the material. And bringing buyers in, that's a little more difficult. That's actually pretty rare to actually bring the buyers in and get them charged with having the stolen material. And I know James can talk more about that one.
Yeah, so really when we're talking about bringing in the people who are buying it, it's based on their knowledge how much they knew about or should have known what they were taking in. And just bare wire is oftentimes you can't really tell where it came from, so it's much more difficult to show or to say that the buyer knew that it was stolen. The Salt Lake County case is unique in that the items that were sold were pretty unique, which kind of makes it a little more difficult for the buyer to say they didn't know what was involved in it.
We were involved in changing or toughening the laws up when it came to the metal sales of the catalytic converters to making it a little bit more serious penalty. And actually, do we also have a cooperative relationship with some of these scrap metal dealers so that they wouldn't accept those metals in those kinds of cases? So we've thought of that angle.
Yeah, so we've certainly worked with the metal recycling industry to try and shore up, because most of the metal recycling industry, they don't want to be buying stolen stuff. They don't want to be involved in that. So it's just a matter of balancing their business models with what makes the most sense with enforcement.
Okay. So the next answer is, if I have a construction project going on in my house, what can I do to reduce these kinds of crimes? Is there anything that put a security camera up? I know LVT has got their trucks in so many different places now because there's so much stuff going on, but that's the surveillance company that you'll see in the Home Depot parking lots. They've got those surveillance cameras. Those things are a deterrent, but I mean, we're going to have those pretty much everywhere before it's all said and done. Is there anything else the public can do to maybe report or help reduce these kinds of crimes, do you think?
Well, certainly the more you lock things up, the better it is. But also nowadays, not even necessarily doing the LVT thing, but there's a lot of more inexpensive things for an individual to purchase that you can use as surveillance and have real-time kind of monitoring showing, hey, someone's breaking into my house right now, or someone's breaking into my construction site right now, and call the police from that. I mean, thieves are pretty, they use their intelligence for committing crimes, so they're trying to get around those, but they're also oftentimes going to avoid the more difficult things to get and go for the easy things. So, if you put your cameras out, make sure it's advertised that you have cameras out, so that they know that, hey, I'm going to be on camera if I'm going to be trying to steal this one.
So do we rely on the public? The public's input really counts for a lot. They need to report. They need to be willing to tell what they saw. Would you say that that's pretty important?
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't know about it, if it's not reported, then we can't. How do we combat that? So we need to have it reported. We can't necessarily solve all the crime out there, but the more that we have reported to us, the more that we can put things together and try and get some of those bad actors.
Now, Megan, for someone that's investigating these kinds of crimes, you're probably learning more and seeing a lot every day. Is there anything else that you want to add when it comes to these kinds of crimes that people might find interesting or that they need to know?
Kind of talking with what James was mentioning, but if you see something suspicious when people are stealing out of junction boxes, that's on public roadways, that's near street lights. If you're seeing some suspicious individuals in the middle of the night, call it in. You'll see, typically if they're working, you're going to see a truck with a logo. You're going to see construction workers wearing a vest. You're going to see lights on the truck. If you don't see anything like that, you can always call it in and the cops will respond and do a check on that. But typically, if it's a legit operation, something's going on, you're going to see names, you're going to see vests, you're going to see lights, cones. And if you don't see any of that, that can be an indicator something suspicious is going on.
Okay, because I think the worst part of these kinds of crimes is the inconvenience. If you have an EV vehicle and you go to recharge your car and you can't because the copper's gone, that's probably, there should be a crime to be able to charge for the frustration that you feel.
Right, absolutely.
I think a lot of people feel that way. All right, Megan and James, thank you very much. This is an interesting podcast. I appreciate you joining us today on Legally Speaking.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and we will talk to you next time.